In a quiet village surrounded by tall palm trees and red earth roads, there lived a young woman named Ada. Ada was breathtakingly beautiful. Her skin glowed like the evening sun, her eyes were sharp and confident, and everywhere she walked, people stopped to stare. Men from many villages traveled far just to see her. Some brought gifts, some brought promises, some even begged for her love. But Ada rejected them all. To her, none of them were worthy. Not the hunters, not the traders, not the craftsmen, and certainly not the farmers. One day, a humble young farmer named Chike gathered the courage to approach her. Chike was not rich. He did not own expensive clothes, but he had something rare, a sincere heart. He walked to Ada with nervous steps and said softly, "Ada, I may not have much today, but I promise to work hard and build a good life with you." Ada looked at him from head to toe and laughed. "A farmer?" she said. "You expect me to marry a man who smells like soil and sweat?" The villagers nearby fell silent. Chike's heart shattered, but he forced a small smile. "I only wish to love you honestly," he replied quietly. But Ada had already turned her back. From that day on, the village whispered about her pride. Even the elders warned her. An old woman once told her, "My child, the heart that rejects genuine love may one day cry for it." But Ada did not listen. She believed something better was waiting for her. And one afternoon, something did arrive. A shiny luxury car rolled into the dusty village road. Villagers gathered in shock. From the car stepped a handsome, wealthy man named Tunde. His clothes were expensive, and his smile was charming. When his eyes met Ada's, he was immediately captivated. Within days, he showered her with gifts, jewelry, fine fabrics, promises of a life far beyond the village. Ada was convinced. Finally, a man worthy of her beauty had come. Their wedding was grand. Music filled the village. People danced. Ada smiled proudly, believing she had chosen the perfect man. But sometimes, the brightest smiles hide the darkest truths. Only a few weeks after the wedding, Tunde began disappearing for days. At first, Ada believed his excuses. "Business trips," he said. But one evening, he left and never returned. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months, until the painful truth finally reached her. Tunde had another wife in another city, and Ada was nothing more than a beautiful distraction. Her world collapsed. The expensive clothes meant nothing. The jewelry felt heavy on her neck, and the house that once felt like a palace now felt painfully empty. For the first time in her life, Ada understood what she had lost. Not the wealthy man, but the honest love she once rejected. One evening, she walked through the village again, but this time, no pride remained in her steps. And in the distance, she saw Chike. He was working in his farm, laughing with a woman and their little child beside him. Chike had found happiness with someone who valued his heart. Ada stood there silently, watching the life she could have had. Tears slowly filled her eyes. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. The heart that rejects genuine love may one day cry for it. And now, Ada finally understood. Some mistakes in life can be forgiven, but some arrive too late to change. And so the most beautiful girl in the village lived the rest of her days with a painful truth. Beauty may attract love, but pride can destroy it forever. Days turned into months, and the once admired beauty slowly disappeared from the center of village attention. Ada rarely left her small house. The laughter that once followed her footsteps was gone. Now, silence followed her everywhere. Sometimes she would walk quietly through the village and remember the choices she made. The gifts she once valued meant nothing now. The beautiful clothes felt empty, and every night, one painful thought returned. What if I had chosen differently? One afternoon, Ada walked past the village farms, and there, in the distance, she saw Chike again. But this time, something was different. Chike was smiling. Beside him walked a kind woman, holding a small child in her arms. They laughed together as they walked through the farm fields. Ada stopped walking. Her chest tightened as she watched them from afar. That life, the life she once rejected, now belonged to someone else. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but something inside Ada changed that day. Instead of drowning in regret, she decided to change. Slowly, Ada began helping people in the village. She helped elderly women carry water. She helped farmers harvest crops. She even cared for sick villagers. For the first time in her life, Ada stopped thinking about herself, and the village began to notice, not her beauty, but her kindness. One day, a visitor arrived at the village palace. He was Prince Kelechi, the young ruler of a nearby kingdom. Prince Kelechi was known for his wisdom and calm nature. As he walked through the village, greeting people, something caught his attention. A woman helping an old lady carry a basket of firewood. Her clothes were simple, her movements humble, but her kindness was genuine. The prince asked a villager, "Who is she?" The villager replied quietly, "That is Ada, the woman who once rejected every man in the village." The prince looked at her again, but what he saw was not pride, it was humility. Curious, Prince Kelechi approached her. "A kind heart shines brighter than beauty," he said gently. Ada looked up, surprised. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. Over the next few weeks, the prince visited the village often. Each time, he spoke with Ada, not about wealth, not about beauty, but about life, about mistakes, about growth. One evening, under the shade of a large tree, Ada finally spoke honestly. "I made many mistakes," she told him. "I hurt good people because I was proud." She lowered her head. "I don't deserve happiness anymore." But the prince shook his head. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he said calmly. "What matters is not who you were, but who you choose to become." Those words touched Ada's heart deeply. For the first time since her betrayal, she felt hope again. Months passed, and one day, Prince Kelechi made a decision that surprised the entire village. He stood before the elders and said, "I wish to marry Ada." The villagers were shocked. The same woman who once rejected everyone was now chosen by a prince. But this time, Ada was not proud. She was grateful. On the day of their wedding, Ada stood beside Prince Kelechi with tears in her eyes. Not tears of regret, but tears of redemption. Because life had taught her a powerful lesson. Pride may destroy opportunities, but humility can open new doors. And sometimes, after the deepest regret, Life still offers a second chance at love.
Just when Ada thought life had finally given her a second chance at happiness, a new test was waiting for her. This time, the challenge would not test her pride. It would test her heart. Months after Ada married Prince Kelechi and became queen, peace and joy filled the kingdom. The villagers admired her kindness, the elders respected her humility, and the king loved her more deeply each passing day. But one morning, exciting news spread throughout the palace. The queen was expecting a child. The kingdom celebrated with joy. Drums echoed through the village, women danced in the palace courtyard, and the elders smiled with pride, because the kingdom would soon welcome a royal heir. King Kelechi was happier than he had ever been. Every day he checked on Ada. He made sure she rested well. He walked beside her in the palace gardens, and sometimes he placed his hand gently on her stomach and whispered softly, "Our child will grow strong and kind, just like you." Ada felt hope growing inside her heart. But as the months passed, her pregnancy became difficult. She felt weak often. Some nights she could not sleep. The palace midwives watched her closely, and the king grew more worried each day. Then, one dark night, the palace woke suddenly to urgent voices. The queen had gone into labor. Midwives rushed into her chamber. Candles flickered against the palace walls. Ada cried out in pain as the hours passed. The king waited outside the room, pacing back and forth with fear in his chest. He had faced wars. He had faced enemies. But nothing had ever frightened him like this moment. Finally, the door slowly opened. The midwife stepped out with tears in her eyes, and in that silent moment, the king understood the truth before she even spoke. The baby did not survive. The words felt like thunder breaking through the king's heart. Inside the room, Ada lay weak and unconscious. The child they had dreamed about was gone. That night, the palace that once celebrated joy became silent with grief. King Kelechi sat beside Ada's bed. For the first time in many years, the strong king cried. He held the small cloth that wrapped the baby they would never raise. Tears fell down his face as he whispered, "My child, forgive me." Days passed slowly. The kingdom mourned with their king and queen, but not everyone believed the king should remain loyal. One afternoon, the elders gathered in the palace hall. Their faces were serious, their voices careful. "My king," one elder began, "the kingdom needs an heir." Another elder continued, "You are still young and strong. It may be wise to take another wife, one who can give the kingdom children." The hall fell silent. King Kelechi looked at them one by one. For a long moment, he said nothing. His voice was calm, but powerful. "Ada is my wife," he said. "She is not a tool to give me children. She is the woman I love." The elders exchanged uneasy glances, but the king continued, "If fate has chosen this pain for us, then we will face it together. I will not replace her. I will not abandon her. And I will never allow anyone to treat her as if she is not enough." The elders bowed their heads, because in that moment, they saw something stronger than royal power. They saw true love. That evening, the king walked into the palace garden where Ada sat quietly. Her eyes were filled with sadness. "I failed you," she whispered. But the king gently held her hands. "No," he said softly, "you are my greatest blessing." And as the sun slowly set behind the palace walls, the king and queen sat together in silence, not as rulers, but as two hearts learning how to survive loss. Because sometimes the strongest love is the love that refuses to walk away in the darkest moments. After the painful loss of their first child, many believed sorrow would follow the king and queen forever. But sometimes, after the darkest storms, life slowly begins to heal again. Months passed quietly in the kingdom. Queen Ada spent her days helping villagers and caring for the people she loved. King Kelechi stayed close to her side, protecting her heart as carefully as he protected his kingdom. Their love had grown stronger through pain, and slowly, peace returned to the palace. Then, one peaceful morning, something unexpected happened. The palace midwife approached the king with a gentle smile. "My king," she said softly, "the queen is expecting again." For a moment, the king could hardly breathe. Joy mixed with fear inside his chest. He had dreamed of this moment, but the memory of their past loss still haunted him. When Ada told him the news herself, tears filled his eyes. This time, the king was more careful than ever. He made sure the queen rested. He reduced royal duties so she would not feel stress. He walked beside her every evening in the palace garden. Sometimes they spoke about the future. Sometimes they said nothing at all. But their hearts prayed quietly for the same thing: a safe birth. As the months passed, the kingdom watched closely. Villagers prayed, elders offered blessings, and the palace prepared for the arrival of the royal child. Then, one calm night, the moment finally came. The queen went into labor. The palace once again filled with tension. Midwives hurried into the royal chamber. Candles flickered against the walls. And outside the room, King Kelechi waited. But this time, he refused to leave the doorway. He wanted to be close. He wanted Ada to know she was not alone. Hours passed slowly. Every cry of pain from inside the chamber made the king's heart race. But then, something changed. The cry of a newborn baby echoed through the palace. The king froze. A moment later, another cry followed. Two voices, two tiny voices. The door opened, and the royal midwife stepped out smiling brightly. "My king," she said proudly, "your queen has given birth to twins." For a moment, King Kelechi stood completely still. Then tears filled his eyes as joy overwhelmed him. When he entered the room, Ada lay exhausted but smiling. In her arms were two beautiful babies, two small lives that filled the room with hope. The king knelt beside the bed and gently held one of the children. "Welcome to the world, my child," he whispered. Outside the palace, the news spread quickly. The kingdom exploded with celebration. Drums echoed through the village, dancers filled the streets, and villagers shouted with joy. Their king and queen had been blessed with twins. From that day forward, the kingdom entered a new era of peace and prosperity. The children grew strong and kind. They played in the palace gardens, they learned from the elders, and they watched their parents rule with wisdom and compassion. Under King Kelechi and Queen Ada, the kingdom flourished. Farmers harvested abundant crops. Markets grew busy with trade,
and travelers from distant lands spoke about the peaceful kingdom ruled by a wise king and a humble queen. Years passed. The twins grew into strong leaders, and the king and queen slowly grew older. But their love remained the same. One quiet evening, as the sun set behind the palace walls, the elderly king and queen sat together in the garden. They watched their grandchildren running through the grass. Ada smiled softly. "Do you remember the day we first met?" she asked. The king laughed gently. "I remember thinking you were the most stubborn woman in the world." Ada laughed too. "And now?" The king looked at her with warm eyes. "Now I know you were the woman meant to walk beside me for life." Not long after, the people of the kingdom organized a grand celebration. They gathered from every village. Drums played, voices sang, and thousands of people came together to honor the king and queen who had given them decades of peace. As the celebration filled the kingdom with joy, the elders stood before the crowd and spoke proudly. "These two rulers taught us something important," the elder said. "That love is not proven during easy days, but during the hardest ones." And as the crowd cheered loudly for their beloved king and queen, Ada looked around at the kingdom that had once judged her pride. Now it celebrated her wisdom, because life had transformed her, from a proud village beauty into a queen remembered for kindness, strength, and love. And so, the story of King Kelechi and Queen Ada became a legend told for generations, a story about mistakes, second chances, and the kind of love that survives every storm. Like, share, and subscribe.